I'll tell you a quick story about the Philippines from a Filipino lawyer I interviewed. I found this really interesting. Do you know at the height of the pandemic, I always call it, in the Philippines, they ran out of luxury cars, often American cars and ones that were sought over from overseas. They ran out of those to sell. Because why? Because the Filipino doctors were making so much money jabbing the Filipino people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's interesting because they were
put
doing...
you in touch with her. Yeah.
Oh, that would be fascinating. You know, Masako and I, we were with some Japanese doctors. Their clinic was closed, so they opened it one day to just give us a big briefing on this. And they were offering bonuses for Japanese doctors. For the more people that you jab, the bigger your bonus would be.
Absolutely.
It was like a pyramid of... So if you jab doctors, 50 to 100 or whatever.
There's no way you can say you're a doctor who upholds the Hippocratic Oath when you're a whore for Big Pharma. And that's whoring. That's prostitution. That's saying, oh, you can pay me a whole lot of money, I will just be your prostitute. And every doctor who's done that, and there have been many in New Zealand as well and all around the world, you have to think about that because you carry that to your grave unless you do something about it. And I often say, contact me, liz.gunn@freenz.org if you want to blow the whistle on what you saw. That at least can expiate some of the guilt you will carry for what you did, hurting other people just for money. Anyway, that's another whole topic. But Michael, it's so rewarding.
We should come back on tomorrow and talk about it.
Yeah, I'd love to.
I mean, seriously, the things that you keep bringing up, I want to go all the way down that road for like an hour. I mean, the stuff that you just brought up it's a massive topic. It's very important.
I would really love to. Maybe I bring on that Filipino lawyer if I can get hold of her. She's very smart. She's very smart.
I can drag Masako in, right?
Well, that would be brilliant. I'd love Masako on. A lot of us wonder. I'd like to hear and listen to Masako very much. Masako and Michael Yon, what a treat to have you here joining us, Masako. Thank you so much for coming on. I wasn't able to get hold of my friend in the Philippines yet, but maybe for a future date we could have a discussion. We're picking up on that little clip from the longer interview I did with Michael last time. We're right at the end, Masako. We just mentioned really vaccines, and as you could hear in that clip just now, Michael said I could talk for hours about this and you need to talk to Masako. Now what's interesting, Masako, for me as well, I put out the New Zealand data, which was from a database built by a New Zealand man for the New Zealand government, a pay per dose database. Our New Zealand government chased people around the world, took down Kevin McKennan's platform when he was trying to download that New Zealand data, and they've threatened people around the world, and they have spent, we think, well over $3 million trying to suppress the truth, along with threatening both Barry Young, the database operator who put that out, and me with prison if we did not take it down. What's very fascinating is then shortly thereafter, Japanese data came out on the vaccine. So what I'd love from you both today in this discussion is something that can show people who are still in doubt about the vaccines, and they're not vaccines, as Michael, you said, they're actually bioweapons, can show people the information so they can take it to their family members and say, look at this precise interview showing you the truth about what those poison shots did. Masako, could you tell us about Japan and the data that dropped there and the situation there now?
Yes, so the group that I'm working with is called United Citizens for Stopping mRNA Vaccine. That's the name of the organization in Japan. And there are more than 7,000 volunteers participating in this movement. And there are many scientists and doctors, practitioners. So they do very research from multiple angles. And what they have been doing is to accumulating the raw data. In Japan, the volunteers go to municipal offices and do the freedom of information request. And the volunteers got the information regarding the person's age and when they got the shot and then when they passed away. The death meaning the all-cause mortality. But based on this data, database is now accumulated more than 42 million.
42 million
injection.
Goodness. 42 million deaths or injuries or both?
42 million injections.
Injections. Okay.
Yes, and out of that database, now the scientists now finalizing the paper to show the tendency of the death or the how many days it has passed after getting the injection and which lots seem to be more dangerous than the others, so on.
Yes.
So everybody can access that database on a website through their website, but the scientists were now working on to publish their paper, and it will be available in Japanese and in English. So the meeting that I was attending today was their group discussing about if there is any error or they're explaining how we can more accurately address the issue. So that,
Do you know when that report is due? Are they aiming for it in the next few months, Masako?
So the Professor Murakami, who is one of the key scientists working on this project, he has been saying next month, but that they are going so accurate and doing a lot of type of analysis. So it took so long time as they predicted. Remember last year, August, they were saying this fall, this winter, and now finally.
Yeah, but then he told us at that time he had like 29 million records. Now he has 42 million.
Yes.
So last time we had dinner with him, I think he had 31 million.
Yeah.
So first he told us over lunch it was 29, then it went to 31, now he's up to 42. The man works like a machine. We spent a lot of time with him. He's pretty incredible.
He's amazing. I remember a speech that he gave. It was so impactful. It went around the world, and he's so steady and calm and believable because what he does is so thorough. You know, it's interesting. Barry Young's database was for a pay per dose database for the government, but it was a record of the deaths only. It wasn't a record of all the injuries, but it was absolute proof of excess deaths. And they wouldn't have spent that much money on trying to suppress it. That's where I say I rest my case, Your Honour. You don't spend that much money trying to suppress truth unless it is the truth. And they're trying to say there's nothing to see, there's nothing to see. So, Masako, are they doing that with Japan? What's the Japanese government response? And more importantly, what's the overseas response, you know, from big pharmaceutical behind the scenes? Because that's what's behind it here in New Zealand.
In terms of suppression, one of the things happened, I think it was last year, right? We are going, speaking against the new type of mRNA injection. We call it replicon. That's the self-amplifying type. And this same organization, United Citizens for Stopping mRNA Vaccine, they are warning people not to take this shot. And then the company, Japanese company who is producing this self-amplifying injection, it's called Meiji Seika Pharma. They try to suppress the information in our work. What they did was they sent us a letter, warning letter, specifically to me and one of the congressmen and to one doctor, one scientist, meaning Professor Murakami. If we keep talking about this, they're gonna sue us. And so far, we have not stopped our movement. And our movement was very successful that not so many Japanese people, as much as the pharma predicted, got the injection. So it was a very successful movement, but they are threatening weaponization of legal case.
Yes, we call it lawfare, like warfare. That's it. Gosh,
to be clear, can I say one thing? To be clear, Dr. Murakami, his name keeps flying around. That's the man behind doing all the research on the 42 million records. That's him, right? He's very close friends with Masako. And Dr. Murakami, when we were having dinner with him last time and we brought up the lawsuit, he's like, I hope they sue me. He was getting excited. Come on. He wants to get him in the arena because he'll be able to fight them more effectively if they come after him. He's absolutely not afraid. I think he's disappointed they haven't sued him, actually.
But they sued one of the Japanese congressmen who actually suffered from the he got 3 times injection for COVID, and then he got the cancer. And luckily he recovered, but he's being one of the key politicians in Japan to move forward for this movement. And he is now going through the lawfare.
Oh, what a hero. What's his name? His name
is Kazuhiro Haraguchi, Congressman Haraguchi.
That's fascinating. You know, Masako, Andrew Bridgen has told me about people who were in Westminster, the mother of all parliaments, whose, for example, his sister was completely devastated by the jab. And he went to Andrew and told Andrew, and Andrew said, oh, good, now you can join me in speaking out. And he went, oh, no, I can't speak out. So in England, they are cowardly, and this man in Japan, whom we can follow now, I'll get a link to so people can follow him. What a hero when a politician actually finds their courage to speak out. But Masako, what's the public awareness of this campaign? Is it very, very wide now? And what is the public support for it? Is there a shift in Japan because of this?
Yes, I think this movement is growing. There are many other groups too who are advocating for this dangerousness of this injection. And this organization, United Citizens for Stopping mRNA, they do more of not so much of protest on the street, but they do more academic, or they sort of like playing a role in the movement by educating people, so they can tell people around them not to take it, or so they're the knowledge of the movement. And yes, it's growing, and this 42 million record of the injection for the database, it's gathered all by volunteers. So one person I heard today went to 300 municipal office to submit the Freedom of Information request. That's how powerful.
We need to buy that person dinner.
He's like a hero.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So it's just growing and growing. That tells me there must be huge rumblings of anger, massive fury in Japan towards what was done. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So, interestingly, not yet in Japan, we don't have a law that would allow government to do total shutdown or total mandate of the injection. So that part we were lucky. So on the other hand, that's why now Japanese government is trying to pass the law, emergency law. So when the government consider it's an emergency, they can move on to more harsh measurement.
Oh no, that's that awful one from the WHO, from the pandemic treaty. They're trying to pass that, are they? The government.
Yes, they are. So we are like getting close to that stage, but we are still not there yet. So we have, I think I can say we have more freedom to speak those kind of issue. For example, compared to Europe, there is one scientist participating in this movement. His name is Dr. Arakawa Hiroshi Arakawa. He is working at an institute in Italy, and he always say that Japan is much not free to talk about this kind of issue compared to Europe. And yes, so he is struggling there.
Is free or not free?
Japan is more free.
Is much more free. Yeah, clearly, yeah.
Because that horrendous pandemic treaty would take away our sovereign right of our governments to manage a supposed pandemic. So you can see how they're trying to set it up so that we can't even appeal to our governments. It's a supranational body. It is so evil what they're doing. Just before we move into what the data is showing, if you can tell me a bit about that, Masako, could this movement in Japan possibly spread around the world. For example, I'm working with Dr. Mary Talley Bowden on a case she is taking against the Federation of State Medical Boards. Do you both know about that? It's a group I'd like to send you the interview I did with a doctor here from America. He lives here now. But it's a group that no doctors virtually knew about 3 years ago when we put this out. The Federation of State Medical Boards, the FSMB, is the head of the snake when it comes to enforcement via medical councils. So it all goes back, really strangely, to a building in Euless, Texas. It's the oddest thing. It's a massive building, but it's hidden behind suburban houses in suburban street in Texas. It was founded by the Rockefellers in 1913, the same year as the Fed. And what's fascinating is prior to the FSMB being founded, there were about half and half medical schools that were more homeopathic and the others were more allopathic, with Rockefeller petroleum-based medicine, should we call it. After the FSMB was founded, it was all in one direction, and that was Rockefeller medicine. So Mary Talley Bowden is based there, and I'd love you to meet her. She's an extraordinarily brave doctor. And she's saying, well, why bother with going after the local medical council that's been cancelling doctors? They're using this threat of cancellation to make doctors their willing slaves, really, to put these poison shots into bodies. She said, let's go for the head of the snake. So that's the legal case they're preparing. And next time you're both in Texas, I would love you to talk to her if you can.
Yeah, I would love to as well. In fact, I've been swapping messages with her. I was just on an interview with her the other day. She's fighting quite hard.
Yeah,
she's
very brave, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
I can see, by the way, why you talk about Masako a great deal. Masako is deeply impressive. Sorry, Michael, I thought you were impressive, but I'm really very, very impressed by your wife.
No, I'm Scots Irish. I'm Scots Irish culture. We got no use for weak women.
That's it.
We want women that can sling a sword and throw lead down the ring. Kill a bear.
I'm very, very happy to talk to you, Masako. So, yes, in answer to that question, we went off on a diversion. Do you think this could become something that could go around the world, your movement that's in Japan, this united movement?
Yes, actually, a lot of the doctors, scientists in this worldwide movement are trying to reach out or reaching out to this organization. And so I think if we can gather core people and have kind of random, discussion and swapping ideas, then we can explode it, I think. Yeah.
But I think if we made it a united people's movement around the world against these bioweapons, that could really take off. So obviously the key to it is going and getting these, what we call Official Information Act, divulgences of data. So you go to as many offices as you can and you find out what's been done. That's really the key to it, would you say, Masako?
Yes. What's fascinating about this data is that it's a raw database. So many other studies can be done in the coming future. And so this database is now open to public. But before they're disclosing all the raw data, they wanted to make sure that some, anti-grassroots movement will attack this movement. So they just want to do the analysis and publish their paper first, then they can, move forward and cooperate with other scientists. So I've been waiting for them to release this new analysis. So this could go, we can launch this database campaign.
That will be incredible. Do you know, Michael, about what happened to the Japanese Prime Minister? Or really, this is a question for you, Masako, the one who died suddenly, very suspiciously in the early days. Masako, maybe you, and then Michael, your view. There was a Prime Minister who we gathered in the early days was saying no to these poison shots, and he suddenly died.
Prime Minister Abe, who was very popular among conservative people. He was considering making ivermectin available for Japanese people, and actually for this project, Professor Murakami that I talked earlier, he was going to have a meeting with him. But I think among other things, he was trying to get natural resource from Russia. So he had a very good relationship with Putin, and he was
Natural gas.
Natural gas, and he was
Pipeline. Right.
Yes, thank you. Yes, and one day he was giving a speech on the street for a election campaign, and then right in front of everybody, he was assassinated. But this assassination is very strange, and people say, people or mainstream media say this young man who shot him in front of everybody, who had a family, who put all the wealth and all the money and life into one cult. That's why this man who got angry about this cult thought Prime Minister Abe is associated with this cult. So he killed him. That's the reason for this assassination. But this story is very strange, and how the party Prime Minister Abe belonged to, which is the dominant party in Japan for a long time and still is. It's called Liberal Democratic Party. Internally, some of the Abe group, they were trying to do investigation on their own, but when they had the first meeting about this, their investigation, they were ordered from the top of the their party not to do this investigation further, so they have to stop it. So there are so many mysteries.
Yes.
Actually, Dr. Murakami, who's done this research, the 42 million records, he was a close advisor to Prime Minister Abe, who was assassinated.
That is fascinating. If it was a one-off, you'd say, okay, it's a one-off. I think that story doesn't sit in my gut feeling. You said in our last talk, Michael, always listen to your gut feeling, always. But now you look around the world at so many of these happenings, and each time all of us have these, something doesn't feel right here feeling. We all have it. Say Charlie Kirk is a good example, and that's really unraveling that story. So much criminality there. But here in New Zealand, we had shootings in mosques in Christchurch, and there was a lot that in your gut feeling you went, something's wrong. But it put Jacinda Ardern, it framed her as a world hero. She's not. And it played into the World Economic Forum playbook because she was a young WEF leader. But nobody was allowed to investigate. We weren't allowed to hear anything about the trial. Everything was shut down. It's the same pattern. I know that both of you, Michael, are always looking at pattern recognition, aren't you? The fact that no one was allowed to investigate that Prime Minister's death. Nobody was allowed in Japan to look into the story. That tells me there's a lot more to investigate there. Plus, he was saying, no, let's go to ivermectin. Let's look at another way, not the World Health Organization way. He must have been a heroic man. He must have been a very brave man. I'd love to know a lot more about that story. Masako, have you heard anything else?
I don't know much about his assassination, but one thing my gut instincts tell me, it's not the story that mainstream media is telling us. And but regarding Prime Minister Abe, it's very difficult to say, because if he were really at some point I started to realize, because I was seeing him as like a hero for Japan and he will make Japan great again. But a lot of the globalization that's happening right now in Japan is decided under his administration too. So he did many compromise, or was he became one of them. But in terms of ivermectin, it's true that he was trying to go for ivermectin.
Actually, Masako, I'll toot Masako's horn. She was one of the only Japanese conservatives that stood up against Abe doing some of those globalist things. And a lot of people turned on Masako at the time, but now they realize she was right, actually.
Gosh, that took courage. How did you know? How had you been researching that for years, the background to it? Were you aware of all of the globalist push a long time ago, Masako? My question is, where did your journey on this begin? Well before Michael, I gather.
Because I'm from Okinawa, and I will try to make it short. Okinawa is a southern island located in southern part of Japan, and this island is always CCP is after for. So they are doing a lot of propaganda to split Japan and Okinawa and rest of Japan, making us victim so that we say, oh, we are indigenous people, we are not Japanese, we want independence from Japan. And, this typical divide and conquer strategy. So I've been working on this media propaganda to protect my hometown or home prefecture. And then I realized that the LDP people who are saying they want to protect Japan, what they are saying and what they're doing doesn't match. Then I started to see a lot of the conflict. They're just saying, they're not doing. That's when I started to realize that. And then I realized, oh, they are not just but people are right versus left. They are all under one same roof, under global totalitarianism.
That is so interesting. And you nailed the phrase. It's always about divide and conquer, isn't it, Michael? It's always about dividing people. So here in New Zealand, they've worked hard on Māori to say, you've been conquered by the whites and the whites are bad.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
Masako, Māori people are the Ainu of New Zealand. So they're like Ainu.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And in Australia, there are the Aborigines. They tried to do it to the Aborigines with something called The Voice. Here's what's fascinating in Australia. The elders, many elders in the Aboriginal groupings said, no, we don't want what the government's offering. We all get on with the white Australians. It's okay. We don't want this thing called The Voice, which was meant to make them feel like victims. So, in fact, the Aboriginals in Australia were more like you in Okinawa. That's really interesting. I think they saw through it, or a certain number of them did. Here in New Zealand, Māori have been offered a lot of money. A few leaders have been offered a lot of money. I bet that happens in Okinawa.
Oh, Masako and I have been seeing this around the world. I just told her the Māori because your accent, I was thinking that she might not understand the term. If she hears it in my southern accent, she'd know what I was talking about.
Yeah, actually, we've been trained to say... We used to say Maori, but we're not allowed to do that now. We have to go Māori. Yes, we have to go Māori.
I know what her accent detector can detect and what I have to translate to Southern.
I'm so used to hearing that now because, everywhere you have to say it absolutely perfectly or else you get called a racist practically. But it's very divisive. Yeah, so they've in a country that was known for not being racist. And I'll tell you why we were small and we played a game called rugby, which is a little bit like your gridiron, but it's worse because there's no headgear protection, there's nothing. But Māori were very good at playing rugby. And so they were like brothers. The men on the playing field were like brothers, like men in war. And my father in World War II just really admired the Māori battalion because they were great soldiers, Michael. So there was this much more brotherly feeling. And it's the same thing, Masako. They've tried everywhere to divide one group against the other. Divide and conquer. Why is that so important? It's a communist Marxist playbook, isn't it, Michael? That's what they do. Yeah. They have to have division.
I know one Māori man. He's been one of my readers for years. He actually visited me in Thailand at one point. And then all this stuff comes up later, but he actually has been a donor to my work, actually, and he's totally against all this stuff. He's like, he sees it for what it is. It's not like the Māori or the Ainu or the Hawaiians don't see it. They're doing it in Hawaii. They're doing it all over the place, right? I mean, they're just as smart as we are. They see it. but of course that divides their community too. So it divides them internally. Because like, let's go to Hawaii. Like China is doing a major information war in Hawaii to get the Hawaiians to want to split off, just like trying to get Masako to split off in Okinawa. Like they're trying to make Masako think she's Chinese, right? And that she's part of the Ryukyu Kingdom, and Japan. I'll let Masako talk about that. But they're doing the same in Hawaii. But a lot of the Hawaiians are like, no. We're Americans. And if we split off from America, China is going to get us, right? But there's always some subset at any culture that'll go, oh yeah, we'll go with the other side. It always happens. And so you have to resist it internally within your own culture, right? The more you have to resist it internally within their own culture and stay united. Otherwise, China is definitely going to take you.
The beauty of talks like this is it helps people with what I see more and more as the key thing. Masako, I think it's pattern recognition, isn't it? You have to see the same patterns around the world and go, well, if that's happening everywhere, then it's being manufactured. This is not happening from the ground up. It's being manufactured. In Okinawa, it's being manufactured to have this division.
Yes, it's almost like a play. The politicians who goes along with this narrative, they look like Pinocchio. For example, one time I went to United Nations in Switzerland to give a speech at a UN Human Rights Council. Not that I advocate for human rights like a leftist, but there was a news came up that the governor of Okinawa at that time, it was to deliver a speech at the UN Human Rights Council about US bases in Okinawa and about people from Okinawa being indigenous people. So I thought, they're going to use UN again to make, because people like authority. So they put propaganda with authority, and then that's the ingredients to brainwash people. So the governor of Okinawa was going to go to UN. So I thought, why don't I try to go to UN and give a speech at the same place and counter what he said.
And you did.
Yes. Luckily,
fantastic.
Group
she doesn't just talk about stuff. She gets on the airplane. Masako got wings.
So,
what did you say, and how was it received?
It was very interesting. So UN has a what do you call like a UN, not the law, but they like to give all the resolutions. And one of the things they declared, a human rights declaration for indigenous people, if they acknowledge themselves as indigenous people, and then if you become indigenous people, you have a right to your land. So that's the logic that CCP is trying to use to demilitarize Okinawa. Meaning, if people like me from Okinawa, I say, I'm not Japanese, I'm Okinawan, I'm indigenous, then suddenly the land of Okinawa, which is part of Japan, is not Japanese territory anymore. Then we say, this is not Japan. Why do we have Japanese military? Why do we have US bases? And then they or using us can get rid of those military forces and they empty Okinawa. Then here comes the red people to invade. So that's the logic they're using. That's why they use the governor of Okinawa to address how much victim they are, suppressed by Japanese government, suppressed by US, and so on. So the day after he delivered speech, I talked yesterday. The governor of Okinawa said so and so, and then I said we are not suppressed and we are not victim. Those kind of I did counter speech. So I think it was very effective because indigenous person speak up against indigenous narrative.
Yeah, total indigenous. And actually, Masako's family actually reclaimed some land in Okinawa from the sea which is the only private family that anybody seems to know about in Japan who actually built part of Japan from the sea. That's pretty wild.
One more thing I forgot to say, so sorry. So those leftist activists or the CCP puppets use UN a lot. So some politician who's been going to use this UN in this way, they dress up like indigenous. It's like this.
Indigenous Okinawans.
Yes, they dress up, the beautiful traditional clothes as their costume for being indigenous, and it's actually Japanese kimono. They have the hair like this. It's a traditional stuff, but so it's like a costume. That's why I said they look like Pinocchio. So it's almost like funny, and they try to use old dialect. But they cannot complete a sentence if they have to make up a new word. So they only memorize certain words that are very popular. And they pretend we are proud indigenous who speak own language when they cannot know. And they only can speak script. That's it.
Wait, how much of the old dialect can you speak? Like your grandmother can speak it fluently.
Yes.
Right.
In my parents' generation, they can understand, but they cannot talk in dialect so much, and or depends on the people. But my generation, my intonation like very Okinawan touch, very heavy intonation, but not dialect wise. I cannot speak dialect much.
There's many dialects in Okinawa.
That's a fascinating question, Michael, because I think language so often points to lineage. So if you were looking at the lineage of the Okinawan dialect, would you say it is closer to Japanese language or closer to Chinese language?
Thank you for this question. Japanese Okinawan dialect is the old Japanese.
Really?
So
here we go.
If we start to study about this, we say we are the Japanese people who are brainwashed by these leftists living on the mainland. They say, "Oh, we protect your culture" or something like this. Like, are you Japanese? You forget your Japanese culture. Wake up. That's the.
I can't wait to share this with some of the lefties. I love it when you get on a roll like that.
The Japanese.
That is so significant because the root
the OJs, the original Japanese.
Yes.
Because the roots of our language tell us so much about our lineages. And there it is. There's the evidence. It's open and shut. And then for the rest of it, it's manipulation. I loved what you said, Masako. It's like watching puppets on a stage, and the politicians are puppets, and the people in the UN. My belief, I'd love both of your views. My belief is a good government needs to get in and say, right, we're cleaning house. The UN is not for our country, and countries all around the world would probably follow suit. The UN, I think, needs to be shut down, Masako. What do you say?
Yes, I completely agree with you.
Yeah. And when you say leftist, it was a different word you used, but it was like leftist people who worry about humanity, humanitarians, let's call them. To me, they're not humanitarians because they are the brainwashed subjects of a much darker propagandist sort of ideology that's coming out of the UN, and they're not able to critically think. Now, I'm very much a humanitarian, to the point that, honestly, I'm so ashamed. Michael, you may never talk to me again. I actually thought Obama was going to be a real sort of JFK. It was going to be a new era. It was going to open up truth. And very quickly I realized this guy's lying, constantly lying. So I used to be on that, what you might call the left. I was very much orientated towards humanity's interests. But now we see that that's all been taken to a much darker place on the left. So I don't even know if I am left or right. I care about humanity's future. And I know that humanity is being lied to. I don't really like left or right at all anymore because how do you describe yourselves, both of you? Are you left, right, in the middle, for humanity, for truth? What are you? Would you give yourselves a label?
Well, I'm not a humanitarian, I'll tell you that. Let me explain.
Wow.
Now, let me tell you why. I tracked some cannibals down in India and Nepal and places, right? And one of them was from Texas. His name was Gary Rayburn Stevenson. He was a cannibal, right? I tracked him down in India. And at one point, he would say, Michael, I used to be a vegetarian, and then he became a fruitarian. He ate only fruit. And he became a pescatarian. He ate only fish. And then at some point he said, then I became, a humanitarian. He would joke about it, right? That's why anytime somebody says humanitarian, I'm thinking cannibal. I think Gary would say, and all those humanitarians are just like me. They eat people.
I shouldn't laugh.
I told him, I said, Gary, you are the funniest cannibal I've ever met. Michael, stop calling me a cannibal. You call your vegetarian friends vegetarians? I'm like, well, they're kind of weird too. I like steak. You're a beef eater.
There's a story I want to ask. There's a question I want to ask you after this on that note. But what would you both? I hate labels, really, so it's odd that I'm asking this. But would you give yourselves a label of sorts? What is it that you would? Because I'm not left or right. Maybe I'm a truth-arian. I like the truth. That's what I like.
Yeah. Actually, there's just a few laws. If you live by them, things will kind of work their way out, and you can count them on your fingers. You know what I mean? Like the 10 Commandments, basically. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Thou shalt not kill. I mean, actually, if you just kind of live by a few basic laws, most other stuff kind of sorts itself out, right?
Yeah.
I mean, but we're constantly, obviously, in a state of war. I've been writing a dispatch about it for the last couple of days, but I don't seem to be able to get it done. But talking about what we're in the middle of now is a process war, right? You see these named wars like World War I, World War II. They're like storms. They're like a hurricane that we gave it a name, but they're not the climate. The hurricane. The climate doesn't revolve around the hurricane. The war is like a hurricane. It comes in, but the other things are constantly going on, right? The battles for routes and resources and ideology, and the ideological routes are about human resources mostly, right? In service of routes and resources, and so and other resources beyond human. And so what I'm getting to is, what are we? I mean, we don't want to see war. Actually, we don't want to see it. We realize, though, that if you're not strong, the people who do believe in war are going to come and get you. They're going to take it, period. So you have to be ready to fight. Bottom line, right, at the end of the day, and willing. And then a lot of people will actually just leave you alone when they see that not only are you capable, but when it really comes down to it, you'll do it enthusiastically, right? And you'll hand out medals to the people who helped you, right? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we won't apologize for it, right? But what I'm getting to is, we obviously don't want to see people suffering or animals suffering or any of that. Obviously, this is the thing. This is how the leftists, what would you call them? But let's say the manipulators will get the people. What's that old saying? If you don't have a heart when you're young, what does it go? If you're not a liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not a conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain, right?
Yes, that's a good
Who said that? It's something along those lines, right?
Yeah.
And similarly, I mean, in many ways, you could easily call me a liberal. I mean, I used to really, if you're going to keep it to yourself, I don't care. I came through that phase. And then eventually, as I saw more and more of the world, I'm like, that's good in theory, but in practice, because we have to look about what works in practice. In practice, I don't want drug addicts around me, because I know they don't just keep it to themselves. I know they're pushing it to all the kids around here. I know it's, it ends up with, at the end of the day, I become more and more conservative as the years go by. And at this point, I've become my grandparents, actually. I mean, my grandmother, Masako knows what I'm going to say. I told you this before. My grandmother used to say, one day you children will be buying bottled water out of the store. And I was like, we're never going to buy bottled water out of the store. And now literally every time I open a bottle of water, I'm like, Granny was right. And, and about a lot of other things too, a lot of other things. But the bottled water thing, because I remember at the time thinking, she's very smart. My grandfather are very smart, but they sure are wrong about a lot of stuff. And then as time unfolds, I'm like, right again and again. And Now, every time I you know how many times I open a bottle of water? I think about what my grandmother told me. So I'm very humble with that now about how wrong I can actually be in a big way, and how those old conservative ways are. That's wisdom, actually. You know, that's not freedom. Freedom to do drugs. That's not freedom. That's freedom to become a slave, right? Like these people that have opened the borders. Masako and I were just on a call with somebody in Sweden, a very senior police officer, and he's talking about all the massive crime that's going on in Sweden after they opened the borders: hand grenades, other car bombs. Rapes, murders, unbelievable stuff just going on constantly, right? Totally out of control because the dodos, as you and I talked about before, they opened. When I say dodos, I mean I'm referring actually to a book I read on island biodiversity called The Song of the Dodo, right?
Yes.
And it was a very interesting, it didn't have anything to do with what we're talking about now. It had to do with island biodiversity, so it was about that. But one of the themes I kept noticing throughout the book is there's these naive cultures of, let's say, dodo birds or whatever on these islands, and whenever some predator comes in and they don't have an immune response to it, they get wiped out, right? And keep in mind, islands are not just places that are surrounded by water. Islands can be the top of a tree that's in the middle of a field. The top of that tree is an island. Or Central Park in New York City is an effective island, right? I mean, there's stuff that lives in there that can't quite get out, and they can't really get out to the outside world, right? And so those are also islands. So you look at a place like Sweden, which in a sense is almost an island, insofar as it's way up there by the Arctic Circle, and it was safely removed from a lot of these really predaceous cultures, and so they had so they were easy to fool. Well, you know, you're doing so great and yada, 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 open the door. And of course, with their culture, with cultural anthropologists who study these firmwares, these cultural firmwares, they find how to sell this to that one and sell it to that one. Then they get them together and that one beats that one. And then, I mean, but at the end of the day, the Swedish did open the door, and now it's massive crime.
And they're absolutely deluged. And I very much want to put you in touch with a Swedish politician who I was talking to the other day, who's standing in the election later this year for sovereignty, closing the borders of Sweden. And she's getting a really hard time. I'll talk to you about that off air.
I got a message from her today.
Great. I gave her your number.
And I responded.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
She's a terrific woman. And for people who are watching, that's a woman called Elsa Widding, Widding, and she's in the process of forming her own party there for the election later this year. She's a formidable woman, very, very brave, highly intelligent. I think you'll like her very much too, Masako. I did drop in that I was going to put something to you. In the end of my first term of my law studies when I was a young law student, we were in an ethics class, and here's the ethical issue. I'd like to know your response on humanitarian or not. It was the idea that you are in a boat, the ship has gone down, you're in a boat out at sea, and the only way that you can survive after weeks and weeks and weeks of no food or water is, according to the suggestion of one of your fellow boats people, we're going to have to kill one of us. One of us will have to die, and we will eat
That's happened many times in reality.
Really, and we will eat that person in order to survive. And so we each had to discuss what we would do. And it's really interesting, Michael. It was very clear for me. I would rather not survive on that basis. I found that
happened actually. That's not a theoretical thing. That exact situation has happened many times, and they would often eat the servants and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Wow. What would you each do? Is it clear for you, the response, or is it nuanced? And is it fair your mind is going to be in a different state, obviously, right? You're not going to be in the state that you are now, well fed, right? So you're going to be in a survival mode. I've gone 40 days without food, so I know I can do that much. Yeah.
But at some point you're going to get to that point where what are you going to do? Like Alex Jones said, I'm going to eat my neighbor, right? I know what Gary the Cannibal would do. Gary the Cannibal would be like, bring over the Heinz 57 sauce.
He'd be a humanitarian.
Straight up humanitarian. He used to call it the other white meat.
You've changed that name for me forever, Michael. What would you do,
The other white
Masako?
meat. Oh, he used to call it. He would tell me the reason that the people in the islands love spam so much is because it tastes like long pig, and the cannibals they used to call it long pig. That's what Gary. What's his name? Lewis Stevenson, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Yes.
which was one of Gary said it was one of his relatives, the author, that's why he says that the spam is so popular around the Pacific. I don't know if it's true, but I mean, I'm just saying. But keep in mind, there's a lot of cultures where cannibalism still does occur. Right? So there's a lot of people that have come across our border, I will guarantee you, that will instantly go to cannibalism. And I don't mean like they don't have to be too doggone hungry. I'm not saying all of them, but there are cultures out there where this is still relatively common, right?
That is shocking. That is shocking.
You know, and years ago when I was tracking those cannibals, I was studying more about that. You can look online where the pygmies down in Congo were pleading with the United Nations to come help them because people were hunting the pygmies down to eat them because they thought the pygmies had magical powers, right? And the same happens with albinos in some parts of Africa, right? They think they have magical powers, so they'll take them and they'll use their bodies for magic and they'll eat them and that sort of thing. And this, I'm telling you, when I said I've traveled this world extensively, when I say you need to shut the door, I'm saying that with full knowledge of what's coming through that door. These aren't people that are going to be, we don't eat people here. They're going to be like, oh, we'll eat you. You know what I mean?
That's the thing.
Not just that, but many other things as well. You know,
I think within that question, within that story is a deeper question, which is, are you willing to survive at any cost? Are you willing to do anything for your own survival? And for me, there was a very clear line. Do you have a reaction to that story, Masako? I wonder if women and men see it very differently. Like, I would not eat another human in order for my own survival. I just wouldn't do it. It's okay to die. I'm not that scared of death. In fact, I'm not scared of death at all. And that's the thing that most frees me. I suspect that you both have that too. In order to do this work, you have to face, well, they could come after me if I tell the truth and tell more truth and tell more truth. It could annoy people who might want people dead, and I'm not scared of that. I just want to die with the truth telling on my lips.
All three of us already are talking into these microphones, which can get us killed. We're already potentially sacrificing our lives for our people. Yeah. We know that. We are willingly talking into the microphone of death right here, right?
Yes.
And so we're not the sort of people that are just going to go, well, that guy's got some gold, I think I'll go kill him. That's not how we roll. We're literally potentially going to die for what we're saying, right? Yeah. So, and Masako is highly cognizant of that. You are highly cognizant of that, as are many other people that are doing this, like Dr. Bowden. She knows that. Catherine Austin Fitz, who we're in a studio, she knows that. There's a lot of us out here that realize that but are fighting back. We're not the kind of people that we're going to go get hungry and then just go smoke our neighbor, right? We're going to do everything we can. And then we may die of starvation.
Yeah, that's it. And there's such a freedom in that. And I realized in that freedom, that makes me free and it makes them scared of me because I'm not scared of them. Because if I'm not scared of death, that's the ultimate thing they can do. I'm not scared of being put in prison. I think you'd teach lots of people around you. You'd learn lots. It would be an interesting place. There's nothing they can do that can fear me. It make me fear them. So it's a really interesting place to be, and I've had to face that as you both have. But I think that issue is one for many people to think on. I'm in a new street here. I've moved into a semi-rural town. And I just heard the other day, my neighbor up the road, about three houses up, is a man who watched the old woman who's in her 80s. If she had more than the allotted number of visitors from Jacinda Ardern, he reported her to the police during the pandemic. And I so want to go and knock on that door and say, how do you live with yourself having done that? You can see what happens when people are shaken up, how they behave comes out of them. And he was a real little Gestapo, that one. And I think I say this because I wonder how many other New Zealanders now sit with that. I was manipulated by Jacinda Ardern. I became a really nasty human being. And I have to carry that to my death. Will they do that again? Probably. And, what extremes will people go to when there's enough pressure? So my question to you, Masako, is where does your moral code come from? Were you born with that? You have a very clear way of speaking and a very clear moral code. Where do you think that comes from?
Samurai.
I'm not a perfect person, and I just admire your courage and the powerful message that you from Leeds came about the boat. And I saw online the photo of you like handcuffed or arrested or harassed by a police officer at the airport. I saw that photo. So I have this image of you, and you're outspoken. It's very courageous. And when those kind of times comes, I will try to be like you and be strong as much as I can. And I have not faced this kind of situation yet. Like Michael was kicked out of the country by CCP, so that's a real tough one too. But he doesn't he's not a victim. He's a American fighter. So what motivates me, my daily work, and compel me to keep going is, I think, because I was told by my father since I was little that my family is a descendant of samurai. And it was very, since I was little, I felt it's very special, and so I have to do something for society. I genuinely felt this sense since I was little. So, yes, maybe I think learning what I am, or what I am living for, or what makes my life joyful or meaningful, the sense of mission is, I think, compelling me to stay strong. And one story I kept hearing, this is a family story, but during the World War II, Okinawa was a little island, and Americans landed actually, so there were heavy battle on the ground.
Very much.
Yeah, and one of the my grandmother's niece. It's very complicated because my grandmother was a widow and married again, and then have 6 children. So the age difference is huge. So I tell story like this. My grandmother's niece, who was in her 16 years old, I think, she volunteers to be a nurse for Japanese soldier. And my grandmother said, if you go, you wanna come back. So she tried to stop her from going. But what she said was, I am still young and there are so many things I want to do. But I want to, yes. I hear it in Japanese, so I'm just trying
to enlist, or I want to.
It's my biggest resolution to go for my for Japan or for society. So basically, she sacrificed herself for the future generation and for the country. So this spirit is very, very special, and I think those kind of pure soul, that it's not like materialism, or we don't chase for instant joy or anything like this. What values in their life, I think I'm always thinking about this, so I think that makes me strong, or helps me to stay strong.
What a beautiful answer. What a beautiful answer. I was 63 at the airport when that policeman I didn't allude to that, but he really roughed me up. I mean, he really hurt me. I said one line because I'm trained as a lawyer. So I said, under what law are you telling us to leave the airport, and what law have we broken? And he just grabbed my arm, Michael. He grabbed both arms in the end, but he wrenched this right arm just so hard over and over. I could feel him really pulling. And 3 years on, and all the muscle tears are still, I've really suffered for it. But what was amazing was I went really calm, and I very much felt my father, who's dead, but I felt him there with me. And later on, they kept us for over an hour trying to trump up charges. But I looked at him, and he wouldn't look at me. He was such a coward, because a man who would do that to a 63-year-old woman, I'm a grandmother, a new grandmother. I am young, I feel very young, but that really hurt me physically. He was a big, strong guy. But I looked at him across from me when I was in handcuffs, and they were humiliating me. And I said, "You young man, this will haunt you to the day you die. I promise you, what you've done today will haunt you." And he could not hold my eye, Michael. It was so satisfying. It was so satisfying still to try and find courage in the face of absolute thuggery and bullying. And we will all have to, I think that's what you're saying. We will all have to find that place, isn't it? Really, Michael, let's go to you and then Masako. We are now having to dig deep and find our personal courage. That's what this is about.
That's it. And there's millions of people out there that have great strength and are standing up. And those numbers are only increasing across Japan, across Thailand. We see it. Taiwan, of course. Taiwan's in great danger, obviously. But we see a lot of, increasing numbers of people that are standing up against this. Of course, the beast is not going to give up easily, but the power of the beast depends on people either quitting or being afraid. When you're not afraid, it's the man behind the curtain. It's the Wizard of Oz. When you're just like, that'll be enough of that, and you actually take action, they don't really have much defense on that.
Mm. And Masako, that's the truth, isn't it? That samurai lineage of yours must have been an incredible thing for you to feed on, to know that your ancestors had that attitude. It doesn't matter what comes at me. I will stand. I will stand and fight.
Yes, and I'm so privileged to talk with you and hear from your first-hand story of you talking to this man and showing your courage. Michael always say, courage is contagious. Fear is contagious and courage is contagious. So you are spreading the courage, and I feel I'm empowered.
That's really beautiful. They look pathetic. I've always thought bullies look really weak and pathetic. I used to stand up for kids at school who were being bullied because I always thought bullies are the worst side of humanity. And thugs in uniform are still just bullies. They're just bullies. And bullies will never win over us. So let's get back to the way they've tried to bully this data and trying to silence it. You're just back to the vaccines. You are saying that this data from Japan, this enormous database, will come out and epidemiologists around the world will be able to study it and pull it apart, Masako. That's what's going to happen?
Yes. So once again, I will tell the name of the group, United Citizens for Stopping mRNA, and they already have a website with the database. It's a short, simple version, but it's also available in English too. Yes.
This is really exciting, and to combine it with the Barry Young data. And I agree with the professor, because Barry Young is really looking forward to being in court, because when he's in court, he's representing himself. He will be able to cross-examine people from the Ministry of Health on their clear lies. He's done so much research that once they're in the box, in the court, in the witness box, they will either have to perjure themselves, that is, lie under oath, or they will have to tell the truth. And so either way, they're caught. It's a really interesting dilemma here, and I agree with you. If you don't fear court and you just keep putting out the truth will win in the end. So let's get to the truth about the vaccines. I did ask you earlier, are you hearing from the professor about trends within that 42 million database that he's looking at? Very clear trends. For example, the New Zealand data shows clearly that the jabs, the poison shots, caused excess deaths in New Zealand, deaths above the norm. What are you hearing?
Oh, yes. So from this database today, I asked what are the points for this latest analysis, and one is that it is before in Japan. It is said that if you get injection, you immediately die. But this data, the graph shows that the point you get injection, and then the peak of the number of the death comes actually later, so like 3 or 4 months later. So they have the curve, and yes, that's the first thing. And they have so many kind of graphs. So once it's published, you can see in detail of the curves. For example, the first dosage, second dosage, third dosage, fourth dosage. This peak is like gradually shifting to the, what should I say? It's first dosage and second dosage is, I see 3 to 4 months peak, but this peak gradually shifts to
the left.
To the left.
Yes. It's closer.
Closer to the date of the shot,
yes,
next shot, right?
Yes.
Which shows how confident they are now that they're getting away with it. That's a really telling thing. So they wanted a temporal gap. They wanted a time gap between the jab and the deaths. And do you know, when they rolled it out to children here, and we heard this overseas as well, they were adding a thinner to the blood. What's that called? It's also a rat poison. It's a wolferin, I think it's called. It's a kind of drug that's used for thinning blood in people who've had heart attacks. They were adding that to the children's shots, we understood, so that children would not have heart attacks straight after the shots. Now, we need to look deeper into that. But if that is the truth, and that's what came to us, but of course they're obfuscating, they're hiding everything. If that's the case, that's very clear evidence that they knew we need to, because children might react more to the shots quickly because they're so awful. So we'll add a drug in to allow the blood to flow, even though it might be clotting in our children, because we can't have children keeling over. So that would be the same pattern. They always wanted a delay between the shot and the death. So that's what you're seeing in the data as well, and we're seeing that in the New Zealand data. There's a delay.
Yes, I think the point you highlighted, if we look at not just like we are analyzing the vaccine, but if we are looking at the design of a weapon, then it makes sense, because I think that's what Michael talked before, right?
Could you address that, Michael? It is a weapon. You said in our first talk of these 3 wonderful talks we've had, you said people who call it vaccines are showing they haven't researched enough. It's time to stop calling it a vaccine. You can call it a poison shot, but more accurately, what would you call it, Michael?
Well, it's clearly a weapon. They're showing one of several things, or potentially an overlap, but one would be either they just haven't researched it enough, or they're actually part of it, actually, because that was why they're using the wrong word, or potentially they're a coward because they're afraid to use the right word. That's actually cowardice. And keep in mind, words are the atomic structures of truth and lies. So if you pick the wrong word from the beginning, all the rest of what you're talking about is irrelevant, because you started with the wrong word. It's like started to try to make water out of, instead of using H2O, instead of using hydrogen and oxygen, you used lithium and sulfur or something, It's just not going to work well. It's like, but this is water. It's like, actually, it's just not. And if you're talking about this as a vaccine or migration, when it's clearly an invasion, clearly a weaponized migration at minimum, but it's been being used as a weapon in war. Since it's being used as a weapon in war, remember, this flashlight is a weapon if you hit somebody with it. So what is a weapon? A weapon is something that you use as a weapon. And there are some things that are designed to be meant to be used as a weapon. This is meant to be used as a light. But what is a weapon? I mean, if you end up in a courtroom because of a use of a weapon, then they're going to say, yeah, that spoon was a weapon. But some are actually designed as WMD. And clearly this was a deployment and employment of a weapon of mass destruction. And Trump is still pushing it. He's still pushing it. And his cult, keep in mind, the highest, they've got there's a lot of severe TDS going on. They call it Trump derangement syndrome. That's the TDS are the people that still support Trump in 2026, despite that he's still Mary Bowden, she just said on an interview a couple days ago that I thought she said 5.5 million children took it again last year, but it may have been 5.8. But anyway, over 5 million. That much is clear. That Dr. Bowden said more than 5 million children have taken the jab just in the last year, right? So if her numbers are accurate, even if it's 10 children, I mean, he's still not backing off of it. He's clearly using the weapon to destroy the United States. And so never underestimate the power of information war and psychological operations specifically. Right? There's people who literally, they have dead family members and they're sick and they still support the guy who's doing it. That is the power of mind control. It is absolutely severe. People with that level of mind control, there is absolutely zero they will not do, and I mean zero. They will take their children, jab with the jab and put it on Instagram, as many people did, right? Literally like an appeasement of the authority, to appease authority in their cult. They literally were doing this. I took all my children to get them jabbed type stuff, right? That, if this were Aztec days, that would have been bodies rolling down the steps type stuff. It was complete human sacrifice. In a real sense, not in a rhetorical sense. That's actual human sacrifice in appeasement of their authority figure.
That is horrendous. That's to make it tantamount to sacrificing your children. And you know that it is not good because you only have to look into what it's doing to fertility. There was no evidence when it was rolled out what it did to human fertility, but now we know. And it will go to the testes and it will go to the sperm count, but it will also go to the ovaries in the young children so that later on they can be sterilized as well, apart from everything else, apart from the clots, apart from the nanotech. Where do you both stand on the nanotech? Because that's something else that came out in my discussion with the Philippines lawyer, that there seems to be nanotech in everything there, including, they think, it's being sprayed from the skies because the Philippines ran out of money to keep paying for all these jabs. But it seems as if they've been spraying it from the skies, getting into the soils, and they're finding it even in fruits there. So where do you both stand? Some people still say, oh, that's a conspiracy theory. Nanotech within the poison shots, within the weapon of mass destruction. Have you got a view, Masako?
I have not been able to, do any interviews or talk about this regarding this.
I wondered if the professor had come across any of that. I'll send you something on it that we've done.
Nano. And I never heard, I did not know about the fruits with nanotechnology.
Yeah, it's interesting that it's coming through, they think, the soils. I can put you in touch with this Philippines scientist, Sally Clark, as well. Perhaps that would be a useful discussion. Yeah.
Can I say something else? Speaking of fertility, a woman was in her grandmother's body, right? Like that, because you're born with the eggs that you have, right? And those are formed while you're still in your mother's body, right? So I mean, literally, you were in your grandmother's body, and so if your grandmother was out doing drugs and whatever that diminishes her eggs, you literally could radiate through the generations. I don't know. I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. But if the seed was already in the tree and the tree got poisoned, we should at least think we should look into stuff like that, right? I mean, you should think about how would this affect not just my children, but my children's children, actually my whole family line, right? From here on out, like you can literally affect your whole family line ad infinitum, right? With these gene modifying things, if they're really doing this stuff. I mean, you're not just making a decision for yourself, you're potentially making a decision for, well, there won't be any more of you because you might not even replicate again. But if you do, what effect can that have on them? We just don't know. We just don't know.
So for people who are slowly waking up, their next question is always, but why? Why would the government do this? A government wouldn't hurt us. And that's the point where you have to awaken. I remember researching...
We just talked about that again today.
Yeah.
One of the things you often hear is why they wouldn't do that because it doesn't make sense. And you'll hear that all the time. Nobody would do that. It doesn't make sense. And of course, our response to that is, well, if you think that somebody won't do something because it doesn't make sense, you're not making sense. Because that is not, in the world that we all live in and have seen thousands and thousands of times, people do stuff that doesn't make sense all the time, right? Constantly. Like we have drug addicts living all over the streets now, right? It doesn't make sense that you would do that to yourself and your body, and you were a wealthy man before, and now you live under a bridge, right? You know, or let's say Hunter Biden. You could have been so many things in your life, and you're that guy. You know what I mean? That doesn't make sense. Well, it happened, right? And keep in mind, many wars, and, you know, things scale up and scale down, almost like fractally. I'm not sure if that would be a proper use of that term, but I think people know what I'm saying. Things do scale up. And insanity happens at a tribal level, and it happens also at a larger level even than that, like at a national level. You can have insanity just scale up. You can have entire massive group, the crowd, you know, where's LeBron when you need him? You know, I mean, the crowds seem more likely to do insane things than the individuals. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but let's just say the crowds are apt to do that. And it seems as though crowds, I've been in a lot of riots I've seen around the world in many different countries, and you can see the collective IQ of a crowd really drops. Yes. The collective IQ of the crowd is, if you added everybody up in there and divided the IQ, I think it would still be less than that. You know, if you had 100 people in the crowd and they have an average, of 100 IQ each, that would be 10,000 divided by 100. So now we're getting back to 100. I think it would be more like 90.
I would posit that happens at universities. By the time you get to university or college, in your term, everybody's so keen to conform that they're actually compromising their own ability to critically think and have a good IQ and really be smart people. It's often the ones who left school early, to me, who seem to be some of the smartest people. They've had to work it out for themselves. It's this herding of us that we almost seem to drop to the lowest IQ in the herd at times. Yeah. Really
clearly happens. We can see it in life. Le Bon, when did his book come out? Was that 1897, The Crowd? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was late that century. Yeah. Yeah, very interesting. Just give us the title of that. It was
The Crowd.
Yeah. Yeah, I have to look that up
Christophe
again.
Le Bon. Actually, there's a lot. We've got in our library at home, Masako and we have so many on this subject. One is from The Madness of Crowds. That's a great one.
Yes.
Or actually, not just one. That's three books. But well, actually, there's more than one called The Madness of Crowds. Actually, there's one that's more recent. And who wrote that one? Because I read that one too, but I forgot who wrote it. But the older one I thought was more. I like the old one. I like older books more than.
Well, I sent you that Solzhenitsyn quote, and I was interested. I haven't read his Gulag Archipelago. Yeah. Have you read his 3 volumes of that?
No, we actually have the whole series, but we haven't read it. I mean, I've read just stuff through, and when obviously, the quotes that are often used by him are actually very applicable to today. You can see. They know they were lying. They knew we were. We knew, and they knew we knew, and they just kept on doing it. Right? I mean, that stuff is happening right now.
Yeah, right? Very much. Well, speaking of lying, back to the data on the vaccines, Masako, what else are you hearing is in the Japanese data Any other patterns that you're hearing about?
So I think this is one of the bigger findings, that the number of the peak of the death is actually a couple of months after the injection date. And also
After the first one's like 3 or 4 months, is that right?
Yeah.
And then the second one is a couple months?
Like it gradually shifts towards the day they got injection.
Now, some people in Japan are like on the 7th or something now, right? Is that right? Or 8th, right?
Yes.
Wow. They must have reached the point where they even look at one and they die. I mean, at that point, it's like, I'm thinking about getting in, boom.
I mean, this is where it comes in also. You mentioned just in passing, Masako, that there are different doses in different areas, and we have very clear evidence of that in New Zealand, in the New Zealand data, that they sent stronger doses, for example, it seems, to the South Island. Now, on that island, the population's more spaced out, whereas they seem to have more benign doses, less concentrated, maybe even saline doses in a big city concentrated city like Auckland, because a lot of people have had a few doses and got away with it. But it feels like Russian roulette. This whole thing feels like putting a gun to their head. That's what it is, isn't it? It's just taking a chance with your life.
And keep in mind how much data that can be collected, that they can have, the beast, let's call it, because, you know, they know who all took the jab one way or the other, because when you're on your phones and doing messaging and whatnot, they're collecting all that data, right? So they're going to know to some serious level of who all took it where, and who, and then when you start talking about symptoms to each other or what you look up, all this is being put in those databases, right? Wow. So they're going to have a lot more data than we're even, I mean, the amount of data that could take, you know, somebody like Dr. Murakami and his able team, it takes them well over a year. They might do that in, 3 seconds, right? Because they know exactly the things we're chatting about, the things, not just what you post online, but anything that you say, anything that you look up, anything that's prescribed to you. They're going to really have an idea of what the effects are of their weapons on people.
I had never thought of that. So that takes that whole idea that we are a giant human petri dish for them. We were just a giant human experiment for them. They rolled out all these different amounts here and there. They did different things in different countries. It's all being compiled as part of an experiment. They're treating very much us as different from them.
They can easily experiment with different music in different places or whatever they want to add into there and see what effects it has on you. I don't know, change the frequency of the electricity coming through your wires or whatever. I'm not saying that they're doing that. I'm saying that there's many things that the mad scientists could want to play with now, and they would have the ability to then derive a lot of data from that for whatever uses that they have for it. And it doesn't seem like a lot of those uses are positive.
And so again, where people say, no, that's too far. The governments wouldn't allow that. The governments are allowing it, and in fact, it's being planned, isn't it, at the very upper levels of the United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, Michael. These are psychopaths who are seeking to run the world, and they have no regard for us, for our families, for our futures, for us as human beings.
Psychopaths are us. And, they seem to, find each other. Yeah. And that, psychopath, only good side of that is they all know that they can't trust each other. They all know that because they're not just psychopaths, to the out group. They're going to be psychopaths to their in group as well. So that'll limit their ultimate abilities because they'll kill each other. They just can't be trusted among each other.
So I'm wondering in the Japanese data if there's any evidence, Masako, of, for example, more benign doses. This is what might be showing up in the New Zealand data of more benign doses at some of the chemists around the pharmacies around where Parliament was, so that the parliamentarians could go and get doses from places that gave them nice saline shots. So they looked after their own. We do know from an information request, an official one, that Jacinda Ardern granted 11,000 exemptions And that probably went to the upper levels of her bureaucracy. It probably went to her fellow sellout politicians within the Labour Party. They looked after themselves. They made sure they were not taking these jabs. We know that Albert Bourla, the head of Pfizer, did not take the jabs. Albert Bourla actually in an interview said, I haven't taken the jab yet because I want there to be more shots to go out to help people.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
We believe you.
Yeah, how stupid.
Can I
do
say
they think
something
we
on
are?
the whole saline thing?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because every time I post, Netanyahu getting his jab, and people, so many people are like, "Don't you understand? He got saline." I'm like, "Do you understand what I'm even saying with that?" It's not about whether he got saline or not, but it's about that he's pushing the jab. That's what it's about, right? It's not. But what I'm getting to with the saline, people, the people that have a seat on the ark, they didn't get saline either. They just didn't get a jab at all. I mean, if you go to the doctor and he's like, "This is saline, I got to give you this to make sure." Why would you jab anything? Just write on the paper. If you're committing that act, then it's not, I shouldn't say committing anything. If you're defending yourself by not getting, why would you even jab saline in? Why would you do that? You should just go, okay, no, I don't want anything, and here's my, my golden card to get onto the Willy Wonka factory, right?
Yeah. We've got something in New Zealand that's very dark at the moment because there is more and more research showing the PCR test might have had some of this mRNA content in it as well. But what they're doing in New Zealand is saying, we need to start drug testing New Zealanders. So we already have breath tests, and they are rolling out, and this has been done with no consultation, a test that is a saliva test, and they can put something on your tongue. We don't know what is in that. We don't know what possible components are on that piece of paper or cardboard, whatever they're going to put on our tongue to gather the saliva. So there's a Chinese tongue scraper. I've said to people, just scrape it off in the car and put it on there. But there's still a dilemma. They're still collecting our DNA. And there is no exemption.
Don't do
None.
it.
There's no
Just
exemption.
don't do it.
Yeah. You would have
Don't
to
do
be,
it.
if we en masse all said no and we were all willing to go to prison for that or go to trial, then it would stop. We would stand up to the government. But New Zealanders are not strong at the moment. A lot of people are not thinking, they're not aware. So they keep on. Will be an experiment, New Zealand, for that to roll out around the world, I guarantee. If they get away with it here, it will roll out around the world. So that's another form of them doing this. They're trying many ways to put this into our bodies. You haven't heard of that at all?
Oh yeah, the
saliva
PCR test or yeah. Oh, we've heard of that.
But the saliva test.
Not the specific test, but that the test could be poison, right? Yeah, or
Could be
part
poison.
of. Yeah.
So I think
they're trying to kill us in any way that they can. So I mean, it makes sense. I mean, at some point, when your enemy's been planting landmines for the last 5 years, and you've been watching people land up in the top of treetops, you kind of. There's nothing that they won't do, right? I mean, we already know that. And that's why, I see now people pushing a lot of ivermectin. And in the past, I bought a bunch in the very beginning. You can see that I bought some in March of 2000, the first year before the jabs were out. You can see it I bought it from Amazon.com. Right? It was still available on there. So I bought it before most people even heard of it. And I was getting it from different places like Mexico when I would go down there. But then over time, I'm like, this might be an ambush in and of itself, right? And obviously, at this point, you've got people pushing ivermectin that in the past were pushing the jabs. So let's think about that. Trump is pushing the jab, and Trump pushed ivermectin and HCQ. I mean, hello.
Hydroxychloroquine, that's really interesting. As soon as they get on the bandwagon, we get off. And
remember, Trump was going, you got your ivermectin, but, it can be that too, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't, these are not, he's committing mass murder, right? Why would he stop there? It's like, but I want you to be healed, you die. You healed, you die. It's like that's not how this works. Look, they're clearing Gaza to make real estate deal and get that energy off. They're doing genocide there, right? They won't hesitate to do what's been done in Ukraine. They will not hesitate. They will not hesitate to genocide Venezuela or Greenland. They will not hesitate to attack Denmark, right? Denmark, who's been a steadfast ally of the United States. Trump is threatening Denmark. Denmark has been an incredible ally of the United States. Our special forces have trained with Denmark for years, right? Going out to scout, swim school, and all that together. They great mutual respect. And suddenly we got goofball president who's pushed death jabs, threatening Denmark. You know, and not only threatening Denmark, that's like Denmark is like the size of a rabbit compared to the United States, the size of an elephant, right? So why are you abusing little Denmark, who is our friend, right? Who's been our ally? That's absolutely insane. I used to travel a lot with Israelis, and I said that I enjoy it. I traveled with them a lot in India and Nepal and Thailand. I spent a lot of time with them. And one thing that I often noticed, though, and I warned them about it repeatedly, there was a habit of being abusive towards taxi drivers or being abusive towards waitresses or waiters, not all of them, but enough of them that it popped off the page. And I would warn them that I am your support base in the United States at that time. Like, people like me are the ones that support Israel. I used to be a strong supporter, right? But when I see you do this in front of me, that the way you treat other people, that is, I'm telling you, you will turn off millions of Americans if you do that. If you're picking on somebody that you think is smaller than you, they will turn on you. And I'm telling you, I'm warning you. You keep doing this. And they would get angry at me. And I said, I'm being crystal clear. I'm your support base. And that's not written in stone, right? That is conditional, right? You know what I'm saying? There is a point where that it'll be over. And it is now over. When I don't support them at all anymore. They pushed the death jab, and Netanyahu anyway did. Many Israelis obviously. Of course, I'm talking with a big brush here. There are many that I would still defend, Israelis specifically. But that culture that, like Trump is doing, he's a Zionist. He's an open Zionist, right? He is very clear about it. He brags about it. That is how Zionists constantly treat people. Like they are the gift from God, and their God is like Satan, right? Their God is not our God. They think that they're God's chosen children, and they can just treat everybody the way that they want, including and up to and including genocide. Trump is one of them. He's very clear about it. He's open. He says it clearly. He behaves clearly. He's mistreating Denmark. He's mistreating Panama. Who is clearly wanted to be on our side, and he comes and he threatens them because they weren't closing the Darien Gap when it was us that was keeping it open. Masako and I were down there all the time in the Darien Gap. We spend a lot of time down there. We're very familiar with how this operates, who the players are, who's doing what, and then you get these clowns like Pasobek and Trump coming out going, hey, why don't you, we might do bad things to you if you don't. Again, who would do that? Who picks on that little guy in the corner like Denmark, who has always been on our side? But then when he talks to Russia, when he talks to Putin, who has hypersonic missiles and hydrogen bombs, and when he talks to Xi, who has hypersonic missiles and hydrogen bombs, people that are clearly not afraid of him, and clearly has a return address, he's a lot more respectful. He's a coward. Cowards are always traitors. Treason is built into the DNA of cowards. Treason, they will always sell you out. That is their nature. If you have cowards in your ranks, you got to get away from them, get rid of them. You don't want them inside your ranks. They will always sell you out. They'll always be the one that tells about the old lady, right? That's getting the 80-year-old lady that's getting visitors. They'll always do that. They're the ones who will run the death camps, right? The people like Trump supporting Gaza and Israel, and now poking his finger in Denmark's chest. Denmark has been nothing but a great ally of the United States.
That is fascinating. Although Denmark is in with Europe, and Europe is very much in with the WEF. So is he trying to...
Trump is WEF.
Yeah.
Trump is WEF.
That's it. There it is. I was trying to play devil's advocate there, but because I do know the Danish Prime Minister, the current one, is very, she's corrupted. She's gone with the whole Agenda 2030. So she's also not an heroic woman. But you're saying the country itself should not be being treated like this because they've been long-term allies of America. What is going to happen with Greenland, in your view, Michael? Where are you at with this?
Well, how many people even live there? 57,000?
57.
I mean, a whopping 57,000. I mean, it's like, I mean, you could fit them on a boat, practically. I mean, it'd be a big, big boat. But what I'm saying is, why would we threaten military action at all? Period.
Because it's roots and resources. It's roots and resources. Right. It's
but why threaten military action? Why threaten? Right. You see the oil executives saying to Trump, like, no mas, we're not going to probably be throwing a lot of investment into Venezuela, right? I mean, routes and resources. Why does he come in and poke his finger into the chest of Panamanians who clearly want to be on our side? They openly want to be on our side. And if we're fighting against China taking Panama, why would you poke your finger into the Panamanian president's chest who clearly wants to be on our side? If you want to make sense out of all here, I'll tell you one paradigm that makes sense, and it makes all the puzzle pieces fit together without using a mallet to make them fit together. Right? This is Trump is working to destroy the United States. If you use that paradigm, if you say, okay, let's see if Michael said something crazy. He said that Trump is working to destroy the United States. Just experiment with that paradigm for 1 month and look at the things that he does and go, well, that would make sense. If you want to destroy the United States, yeah, pick on your allies, threaten to do military action against little Greenland, you know what I mean? Be arrogant to everybody that you come across, except for the ones who'll kill you, and to those you get on your knees and beg and all this stuff. He is a straight up Dr. Smith out of Lost in Space, right? Dr. Smith, Lost in Space, for those who've seen that. That show, with Dr. Smith from Lost in Space, those characters are on there. They are, built from archetypes that are real. That's the coward. That's the coward that's always committing treason, Dr. Smith. That is actually Trump. But he's in a position of power, right? So he's easy to control because he is a coward, and he is greedy, and he is like Dr. Smith, and he is narcissistic like Dr. Smith. Oh, the pain. Nobody's, he's a professional victim. Dr. Smith, professional victim, always a predator. Professional victims are always predators. I've never seen an exception to that, right? And that goes for cultures too. There are cultural professional victims. Like CCP is constantly like, look what they did to us with the century of humiliation. Look, China was doing the exact same stuff to other people. And when the shoe got on the other foot, they're like, oh, the pain, with the opium wars. They were doing opium wars. And they're still doing them. They were doing them. They were doing it during the time of the opium wars. And they're still doing them, right? It's like, but they're like, oh, look what they did to us. And they did. But it was big boy rules. Rock 'em, sock 'em. Ribs get broken here. But why would you push around little 57,000 people in Greenland? Why would you do that? If we really wanted that for the minerals that are under the ice, because that might be what it's about, it'd be very hard to get to, I think. But if you really wanted to do that, why don't you just buy it? You know what I mean? And do it behind closed doors. Like, hey, we'll give everybody here U.S. citizenship. Well, everybody here will make some money, and instead it's like, oh no, we'll come in with the airborne and parachute in and shoot everything up at night, like a bunch of idiots, right? This is mental illness or something else. It's not 5D chess. It's something much more sinister.
That is fascinating. And I love what you say about professional victims. That's exactly ties in, Masako, with what you were saying about the Okinawans. They're trying to make them professional victims, or our Maori here in New Zealand. You're professional victims of the white people. It's so breaks people down. So he's doing it like this blunderbuss around the world now because he can, because he's showing off, because Israel wants the destruction of the West, or a combination of all of those, Michael.
Can I say one more thing about that? That's an interesting question. All the soldiers who are in Iraq and Afghanistan who did a lot of combat will recognize what I'm saying. I spent 2 years in Iraq and 2 in Afghanistan. And what I'm about to tell you next, I saw many times. We would hire interpreters, right? And the interpreters were, whether it was Iraq or Afghanistan, the interpreters, you had to keep an eye on them because the interpreters were always trying to prove that they were good and loyal to us, right? So when we capture people, which was happening constantly, I saw thousands of people get captured, right? We were constantly, firefights, and next thing you know, you had to keep the interpreter, like, do not punch them, right? Because they'll come up and just punch them in the face, right? And it got to the point where it's like, look, if you punch them, we're going to arrest you, right? And I mean, it's like, this was, our own interpreter, you know what I mean? Like, you can't come punch our prisoners, you know what I mean? That's called a war crime, right? So,
because they were so angry,
his hands are tied behind. No, not angry. They're trying to prove that they're loyal to us.
I see.
They're punching their own people. They're punching their own people. This happened over and over, and our guys are like, don't put the terp. They'll call him the terp, the interpreter. Don't put the terp and the striker with him because he'll, the thing went off, but that's okay because we can see you here. But I mean, what I'm getting to is that's the way Trump looks to me. He's trying to prove to his bosses how loyal, how good he is. He's the soldiers who were in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially if they did a lot of combat. Ask the special operations guys who did a lot of combat, or the infantry guys, because this will click in their mind when I say it. They're like, yeah, that's right. I remember that. I remember I almost had to punch the interpreter because he was punching some guy who had his hands tied behind his back. We don't beat up prisoners who have their hands tied behind their backs. You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, if we're in a firefight and you kill them, whatever, okay, that's it. But if once we capture them, you don't beat the hell out of them. But the interpreters would often, not all of them, there were some great terps, but there was others. They wanted to prove that they're with us. And I hate those guys is the way that they're trying to prove. That's what Trump is doing. Trump is acting like, I call him Orange Obama, but he's actually like, an orange terp. He's like a terp. He's always abusive to anybody he has power over, and it's like he's doing it in front of those who own him, who are watching. Whoever's paying him or owns him, he's a biting dog for his master.
That is fascinating. You've heard about the Judas goat. Have you heard about the Judas goat? They have a goat that will lead the herd to slaughter. He's a Judas goat. He's actually willing to do this. And people, now my brain also is doing this. He's a multi-millionaire. All his kids are multi-millionaires or billionaires. I don't know how much Trump money there is. Why? Why does he want to destroy the very goose that has laid the golden egg for him, which is America? He thinks that he'll get more from when Israel is running the world. Is that what he thinks? He thinks
I can't read his mind.
More power.
I can't read his mind. Masako and I know you can. We've talked about this so many times. You can spot your same and you can spot your opposite.
Yes.
And Trump pops off the page to me. He's my opposite. I can see his X-ray against the sun. Right. I see his veins and arteries and skeleton because I can see right through him. Right. Yeah. All I have to do to predict what he would do is just ask myself, what would I do? And then I pick the opposite, and that's what he does. People are increasingly over time, have been saying it for a couple of years now. They're like, people have been publishing this a lot now. You were right about Trump. You were right about Trump. And all, people that used to fight me all the time, they're realizing it, that I'm right. And they're like, how do you do it? I'm like, it's easy. I just see what I would do and pick the opposite. Yeah. I mean, he's like a terp. He's everything that I don't like in a human. He's like the opposite. He's like truly the photo negative of the way I was raised to be, or the way Masako was raised to be, and obviously the way that you were raised to be. Yeah. He's our photo negative. If you want to know what he's going to do, just imagine what would Liz do, and, well, pick the opposite, and you'll see he does it. Yeah. Pick on Denmark. It's like pick on Denmark. You can't even make up this stuff.
That's crazy. Let's have your predictions then. Where do you think it'll go briefly, and what can we do? I think it's always good to end these discussions with advice to people. What can you personally do in your life? So first of all, where do you think this will all end up? Will it ramp up and up and up? Masako, maybe you first. I would love that. We haven't heard your wonderful voice for a while. I just have loved having you in this discussion. It's been amazing hearing about the Japanese data. But yeah, where do you feel, Masako, looking at the world perspective as you and Michael do so much?
Yes. We actually, we've been spending time with Catherine Austin Fitz a lot, and she is very amazing. Not only addressing the issue, but by publishing Solari report and building community, she is actively engaging in how to build alternative or our practical way to survive.
Yes.
So the term I learned from her, she uses the term official reality and reality. So yes, and I really like the way she talks.
I'm going to go get one of the Solari reports so I can hold it up. That's what I was looking for. I'll be right back.
Yes.
Oh, right here. There we go. I got it.
She has a lovely, elegant studio where you're sitting, by the way. I like the flowers behind the couch. It's very like her. She's very refined, intelligent. Wow.
That's the latest.
Oh,
Right.
I get that online, but I haven't seen that cover. Oh, that's wonderful.
Oh, yeah. Look, it's printed.
Wow.
Yeah.
They're like a book.
It is. It's pretty awesome, too, actually.
Very, very educational.
Yeah.
And so you were saying, she says there's the official reality and there is reality. Just tease that out a bit more for people, Masako, just what she's referring to there.
So as I understand what she talks about, official reality is the fake world that globalists are trapping us in.
Yes.
And reality is the real world that we need to actually open up and live. For example, like if we are to talk about our wealth or cash or gold, silver, the real estate or real stuff is the real reality. Official reality is, for example, like Bitcoin or something that made out of thin air, but they propagandize as it's valuable. We invest a lot. They use this system to suck out of us of those things. So, or for the way I can understand easily is that invest a lot of time with real people like family or friendship, because during the hardship, Catherine went through so hard times because she had litigation with against the government, but what saved her was that people or relatives around her. She calls it people's bank account instead of the manipulative banks. If we can create a trust and build a relationship with good people, we have a people bank who would help us when we need. So those real stuff, instead of like invest in time in fake, fake reality or virtual reality or, the fantasy that they create, we need to invest in real stuff. So maybe this can be a little bit of philosophical the way I'm talking, but from this point of view, we can use our effort and time a lot in real sort of like, I think, breaking the matrix world and live real life instead of taking supplements. We eat real food, vegetable. So that's the way we can survive. Yeah.
That is so beautifully said. And in the Bible, there's a teaching which is about build your house on rock, not on sand. And it's a little bit like the commandment, treat other people the way you want to be treated. It's so simple. But I remember being in mainstream media all those years ago, Masako, and thinking, everyone here is all about their own power, their ego, their money. They're all lusting for things that are like building their houses on sand, can all be washed away. It's all meaningless. And I had to get out of the media at that point. I just didn't believe in it. And I stopped believing that they were telling the full truth as well. And I've seen certainly from the outside how little they do tell the truth. But anyway, I just thought power and, Trump's lusts are for power and ego and money. It's all building his house on sand. It will be washed away. It has no meaning to him when at the point of his death. And what you're talking about, what she's talking about is building your house on a really solid foundation. So that's a really lovely, lovely thing to leave with people. What is solid in your life and build on that. Thank you.
Yes.
Michael, where do you see this going? This invasion, this chest beating, this showing off by a little coward. And then what's your advice to people?
Well, Trump's going to come and go. I mean, so he'll be gone soon enough. Yeah. And he's a leaf on a tree, and it's autumn, right? Yeah. And his autumn. And then somebody else will come, obviously, because he comes from an architecture. It's not him. He's just a player on the on that stage. It's going to get interesting. I mean, I would not be surprised. This may sound incredibly crazy at this point, but I say things like that often that turn out to, how they go, Masako. I mean, we research 7 days a week for years on end. I would not be surprised to see some European allies actually pushing over closer to the Russian side, actually. I wouldn't be surprised.
Very interesting.
Because of fear of the United States. If the United States does something, because remember, if you go back to, if Trump is trying to destroy the United States, which he clearly is, with the death jabs and other things, then he will continue to do things that destroy our relationships. And because our soft power basically is gone because we've destroyed it over time. I've been talking about that for more than 10 years. When I first realized one of our ambassadors in Thailand, named Christy Kinney, was doing that in Thailand. And at first I thought, wow, that was an inept thing to say. And then she kept doing things, and I was like, she's incompetent. And then I moved to, is this incompetence? This is sabotage. Then I thought, is she just trying to destroy Thailand? And why would she do that? And then I started to realize, actually, she's doing things that damage Thailand and the United States. And then we saw an ambassador in Japan and India and these other countries doing the same thing. I'm like, wow, this is a pattern, and they clearly seem to be damaging the host and us, right? Like doing simultaneously, like the thing that just happened in Venezuela. What did that do? Nothing. Zero. I mean, even if it was real, I mean, I don't know how much is real and how much is fake. I have no idea because they lie about it. Where's Shoshtanich and the name I can never pronounce or certainly not spell? You know, it's like nobody can seem to spell it, even Russians. But we don't know what is even true. But why would you do that? Nothing at all was accomplished. The entire architecture is still there. So let's say you got somebody out for drug smuggling, and so what? You know what I mean? So you basically just took out the manager of some big department store, and they have, thousands of other department stores, and then there's headquarters. He's just some guy. Maduro, on the scale of things, is just some guy. He's some guy that's called the president. And now he's gone, right? So now this whole architecture is still there, but all the neighbors are going, the United States is insane. And it's acting as bad as anybody we've ever seen, right? So it destroys our soft power, and it puts a bullseye on the back of American business people. You think the oil people want to go down there now? I mean, they could be killed, obviously, right? And they're if they invest, tens of billions or $100 billion to get that oil out, which they could easily get somewhere else anyway, like Texas and Alaska, Canada. I mean, why would they do that? Why would they do that? And so the oil executives, as you can see, were pushing back on Trump during that recent interview. I don't know if you've seen it. It was quite interesting. And so the point is so what did he accomplish? Except make more enemies. And one of the ways that you lose in this sort of warfare is just making enemies, right? You just come in and you just provoke people and make everybody angry, and that's one. I mean, that's all the Green Berets and some of the Navy SEALs, depending on what kind of stuff they did in the SEALs, but I think, or at least all of the old school Green Berets know about unconventional warfare. I don't know about what they teach them now, but in unconventional warfare, when you're in an environment like that, you don't want to come in and make a lot of enemies because you're forming teams to do things, right? You want to do the opposite. You want people to work with you. You want to gather their energy and help towards a common goal. The last thing you want to do is do war crimes. That's why you don't want your terps, like the special forces guys are not going to let their terps start punching the teeth out of some prisoner. You know what I mean? It's just like that doesn't do anybody any good. Yes. And it's actually a war crime too. But now that's what Trump is doing with like Denmark. He's like, I'll kick you off to the curb because you're little Denmark. Well, guess what? Little Denmark has a lot of friends, and also little Denmark is in a nice, very strategic location, right? And a lot of other things. We don't notice them because they're nice, but as soon as they're not nice, they'll be very noticeable, right? And so, I mean, this is important. So why would you make enemies basically giving up squares on the chessboard to your actual enemies? That's what he's doing.
It's fascinating. And when you look at NATO versus Putin, you can like or not like Putin, leave that out of it. But Putin has not responded to NATO's constant jabs at him, trying to rack him up. And it isn't working. He's stayed calm. So, yeah, if you're looking for stability of any sort, there is more stability in Putin than Trump, certainly at the moment.
Putin does not appear insane or emotional. He appears like he read the Stoics. You know what I mean? Like he's just let it just fly by, and that the wind will go. And keep playing your strategy. Keep playing your strategy. Don't listen. Play your strategy. Because at the end of the day, the physical world is going to overcome the big mouse, right? And as Trump is creating these enemies, like little Denmark may not seem like much, but all these little places in the world like Denmark, actually they can have a big influence. And again, why would you alienate people that were freely sharing intelligence with you last week, and now they might just go, well, don't pass that to the Americans. I mean, they're not doing anything in our best interest. Or if we pass that off to the Americans, they might figure out what our sources are, what we intend, right? They're going to start shutting us down, and it'll happen like that, right? And again, Sweden and Norway and certainly all these other countries in the neighborhood, Finland, they're all going to be noticing this, of course, and they're going to start giving him even more of a cold shoulder, and being more and more brusque and punching him in the chest is not working. No. They're going to rise up against us, right? Now, who does that? Now, if you want to destroy the United States and Europe on a larger scale, look, Ukraine has basically been destroyed, just as many of us warned. I mean, they're smoked, and how? I mean, it was so obvious from the beginning. People kept saying, "You're going to be proven wrong." I'm like, please print this out, put it on your wall, get back to me later. At some point, this war will be over, and you'll be wrong. I think. Of course, I don't ever know. I don't know. But it was clear when you looked at the conditions. The conditions were not good for Ukraine, and they're not good for Europe or the United States now. The conditions are increasingly bad for Europe and obviously New Zealand and Australia, and increasingly so for Japan. Japan has to stand on its own feet. Japan needs hypersonic missiles. Japan needs nuclear submarines, right? Japan needs to be able to defend its own waterways. If China wants to block off Japanese food supply and energy, Japan needs to block Strait of Malacca from anything going to and from China. Like if something comes away from China after dropping it, sink it, right? That's the only thing that China is going to understand is your ability to, like, if you do it to us, we'll reciprocate, right? If you sink ships coming with food to Japan, we'll sink ships going to China or from China, either way, yes. Right? And once you start doing that, everybody, because China can be put into famine too, right? And so this is a big deal. This is big boy war. It's very, very serious. Everybody has to have their game faces on. They have to realize that there are insane people that are doing things for nothing but the carrot that's right in front of their nose. and and their owner is on their back.
Interestingly, I know someone who studies deeply numerology, and whether you dismiss it or not, it's very, very old science, and numbers run this world. That they, on the other side, use numbers against us. 9/11 was specific numbers, and I won't go into all of that. It's a fascinating science, however. But apparently the numbers for both Israel and Netanyahu are terrible this year. If you look at nothing else and think, this might be the year Israel actually has its own karmic debt, or Netanyahu and the Zionists, let's say, has a massive karmic debt to pay. And it might be the year we start to see that. But I wanted, before we finish, to address something I've read about called the Samson option, that apparently Israel says, if they try to take us down, we've got nuclear weapons and we'll take the whole world down. Would they, have you read about that? And do you think we know he's psychotic, but would he be that psychotic? How far do you think they go?
So. Yeah, of course. I mean, Samson option is something that, has been, and they brag about it for years, Basically, if it comes down to us, they're saying, the thing is the conditions have been set. Now, keep in mind, it's very important to study mythology and other forms of ideology as well. But when you look at the myths that many people have, many Jews and many Christians, but in different ways, they see Armageddon, right? And the thing is that people will tend to point their toes in the direction to make that mythology come true, right? So if in your mythology, all these bad things have to happen over there in order for these other things to happen to fulfill the scripture, right? Your toes will point that way, your eyes will point that way, and you will walk that way, right? That's the way things go. That's why you have to watch routes, resources, and mythology or ideology, right? Because these are all, big components. There are clearly a lot of Jews, not all, because, that's very complex, and a lot of Christians, again, that's not all, because that's very complex. There are many Jews and many Christians, some subset of those larger groups, that definitely want to see an Armageddon, right? And the conditions that are being set for, when you look at the neighborhood that Israel is in, and the reason that it even exists is for routes and resources, right? Like Suez and that sort of thing. But when you look at the neighborhood that they're in, they've got no friends, right? And if the United States is unable to defend them, they're done. They're cooked. And if they decide to use nuclear weapons, they will be erased, right? Because there are people like the Russians, they'll take them out. I'm quite certain of that. The moment that Israel launches any nuclear attack on anybody, the wise thing to do is to absolutely obliterate them, because you never know where their next missile is going to fly. And once they start doing the school shooting, China and Russia and others likely will be thinking certainly they've already got their targeting programmed in, right? But now keep in mind, we don't know what Israel is going to do. We just don't know. But they're clearly trying to hold the world hostage with nuclear weapons, which they could easily have hidden all over the United States, because we are not their ally, right, at all. That's obvious. And I think that more and more people are waking up to that. They are absolutely dangerous. They're trying to get the United States into a no-holds-barred fight with Iran. And I think it's quite clear what just happened in Venezuela was the same parties, right? Why would we go into this big war with Iran? There's no good reason for it at all. And meanwhile, Trump is going, if you hurt the protesters over there, and we're going to come and do something bad to you. We don't even know what's really happening. They lie about everything. All these reports about what's going on. And even if they are having knockdown, drag-out protests in there and a lot of people getting killed, that's not for us to go get in the war about, right? Anybody that wants to go, please go have fun. But that doesn't mean that the rest of us should be going or adding our tax money to it, or certainly not our weapons.
It's interesting about Israel with the nuclear weapons. When you look back at John F. Kennedy, he saw that. He did not want Israel to have nuclear weaponry. And there's a whole lineage of questions that arises from that. What was the implication of that for him in terms of losing his life? But let's perhaps start to close off now. So just as a former Green Beret, Michael, do you think there'll be a point where the soldiers themselves, like they did around the Berlin Wall, They said, enough already. We've just had enough. We're not going to guard this. We're not going to keep this regime going. Let the wall fall. Could it be up to the soldiers and, if there are enough intelligent police, that cop who beat me up was not one, but there may be some intelligent police. If the soldiers and police no longer stand with the thuggish, ridiculous, psychotic politicians, it's over. Do you think there's a chance the American military might say this president is out of control and we're not going to keep following orders? Or are they so trained to keep doing what the president says?
Not seeing any indication at this point that people are going to stop, following orders.
Wow.
Not seeing it. I mean, could. Obviously it could. But a lot of the people that would not do that are already out, right?
Yes, that's
true. A lot
true.
of the people, they protested by just leaving. But we haven't seen anybody say, no, we're not going to supply intelligence to the Israelis or weapons to do genocide. That's clear genocide.
So it's up to us to point our toes in the right direction. And at the end of this, I'm going to put up a prayer that I read out, but it's a prayer that when I interviewed Catherine Austin Fitz, it is her favorite prayer. I don't know if you've heard it, Masako. She talked about this with you. It's called the Deer's Prayer, and it's extraordinary. It's a really beautiful prayer. So I think we have to point our toes in the direction of what this prayer says, which Catherine said really feeds her soul. And I may also put up a piece by the professor that I read out as well from him when he was questioning the jabs. It's been such a delightful conversation with you both. Unnerving, but it calls on each of us to take responsibility now. And I think that's the most powerful call from both of you. I have to finish with you, Masako, with one question. What is it like living with Michael? It must be so exciting, so interesting, constantly a surprise and just a joy, isn't it?
Michael is 24/7 like this. He's a real fighter, and he has a very good heart.
As his wife does, I think there is a reason, Michael, that you speak so much about Masako and with such deep respect. What a fine couple you are. It's been a real honor to talk to you both. We'll keep in touch. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night, Liz.
Good night. I'm Liz Gunn, and I'm going to voice this message from Japan to the world. It is partly so that other women will join me in taking in this information. So I wanted it to be from this man to the men and from my voice to the women, and to make it easy to understand in English. This is such an important and brave message that I'm about to read. We'll put the full message from the Japanese professor at the end of this piece. It's such a brave message and so important, and explains so much with logic and calm and rationality, that I have decided to read the message, and then you can see what the professor is saying at the end of this piece. It is crucial we get his message around the world in whatever way we can. Here it is. He begins by saying, "Thank you very much for giving me this valuable opportunity to send my message about human rights abuse in the time of COVID-19. He says his name is Masayasu Inui, Professor Emeritus of Osaka City University Medical School. His specialty is molecular pathology and medicine." And here is his full message. "The pandemic was used as a false pretext by the World Health Organization to drive vaccinations of all peoples in the world. A plan was set up to shorten the time to develop vaccines, which usually takes longer than 10 years, to shorten it to less than 1 year. Operation Warp Speed. This operation was used to cover up the misconceptions of the genetic vaccines. Under the pretext of saving time, an extremely dangerous method was selected. That is, intramuscular injection of viral genes to produce toxic spike proteins directly into human tissues to stimulate the immune system. Because this is a completely new method and misconceived method that has never been applied before in human history, it is impossible, therefore, for most doctors to give proper informed consent. However, due to irresponsible government and media campaigns to promote vaccines, 80% of the Japanese have been vaccinated. Now, this Japanese professor is applying it to his home country of Japan. We can apply it to New Zealand. If you're from any other country, you can apply it in your own land. He continues by saying, unfortunately, 7 shots have been done so far. This is the most and worst in the world. And the result was the induction of the terrible drug-induced injury that has never been seen in human history before. This professor says he believes that the fraudulent use of the experimental gene therapy into healthy people, particularly into healthy children, is an extreme violation of human rights. However, Kaizo Takimi, the Japanese Minister of Health, Labour and Welfare, has been insisting that there is no serious concern about the injury caused by genetic vaccines. And without learning from the current situation of injured patients, they plan to construct a new vaccine production system in preparation for the next pandemic. This is an unbelievable and crazy situation. The Japanese government is the first in the world to approve a new type of vaccine called replicon vaccine, and it plans to start to supply it in this autumn and winter. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry is providing a huge amount of subsidies for this project, and factories to produce new vaccines are being built one after another in Japan. This professor has visited these factories directly. Furthermore, he says the Japanese government is currently soliciting large-scale clinical trials worth $900 million from pharmaceutical companies that are taking on the challenge of developing vaccines to prepare for the next pandemic by disease X proposed during the Davos conference this year. It is speculated that the movement by the Japanese government is part of CEPI, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovation's 100 Days mission, which aims to shorten the time to 1/3 of Operation Warp Speed. Namely, they are trying to shorten the vaccine business cycle by developing a vaccine in hundreds of days. This is possible only by ignoring the human rights perspective. Amendments to the WHO, the World Health Organization, the International Health Regulation, IHR, and the so-called Pandemic Treaty, which are about to be adopted at the 77th World Health Assembly this year, 2024, are attempting to give rationality and legally binding force to such unscientific and dangerous, crazy plans. If such things continue, there is high risk that Japan-made vaccines will be exported under the guise of false trust. If Japan were to become a vaccine perpetrator, it would leave irreparable harm to future generations. Therefore, the actions of the Japanese government must be stopped by international collaborations. Although it has already been 3 years since this professor started to give lectures to educate Japanese people about the dangers of vaccines, it's still difficult to penetrate through the sound barriers of mainstream media. He says, if we tell the truth about vaccines on YouTube, that is deleted within a day. The reality is that we are facing censorship and speech suppression almost every day. This professor then alludes to a book that has the title Withdraw from the World Health Organization. He says it's difficult to stop this movement because it is now politically hopeless to change the situation of the Japanese government. And that applies to all world governments, as we know, that are sold out to the World Economic Forum, the UN, and the WHO. So he goes on to say, the message I would like to cover is to convey to the world that when disease X occurs in the future, you should never trust the Japanese-made vaccine that was developed in a short period of time in order to protect human rights in cases of control that transcend national boundaries. He says, I believe that sharing the truth is so important and that this is a step towards unity and solidarity. Only through the process of information exchange among all countries in the world can we find hope in the midst of despair. I do hope, he says, that my statement will help all of you to protect your healthy life and your family. And then he finishes by saying, thank you very much for your attention. I would add one thing to this message. Please share this brave Japanese professor's message everywhere you can. It is only in sharing the truth that the truth will set humanity free from the lying puppet governments who have collapsed into the agendas, particularly Agenda 2030, the agendas of the United Nations, the World Health Organization run by the Gates Foundation, and the World Economic Forum, which are doing so much damage to humanity across the world. Please share this man's message.
Thank you very much for giving me this valuable opportunity to send my message about a human rights abuse in the time of COVID-19. My name is Masayasu Inoue, Professor Emeritus of Osaka City University Medical School. My specialty is molecular pathology and medicine. The pandemic was used as a false pretext by the WHO to drive vaccinations of all peoples in the world. A plan was set up to shorten the time to develop vaccines, which usually takes longer than 10 years, to less than 1 year, Operation Warp Speed. This operation was used to cover up the misconception of the genetic vaccines under the pretext of saving time. An extremely dangerous method was selected, that is, intramuscular injection of viral genes to produce toxic spike proteins directly in human tissues to stimulate the immune system. Because this is a completely new method and misconception method that has never applied before in human history. It is impossible, therefore, for most of doctors to give proper informed consent. However, due to irresponsible government and media campaigns to promote vaccines, 80% of the Japanese has been vaccinated, unfortunately. 7 shots have been done so far. This is the most and worst in the world, and the result was the induction of the terrible drug-induced injury that has never seen in human history. I believe that the fraudulent use of experimental gene therapy to healthy people, particularly to healthy children, is an extreme violation of human rights. However, Keizo Takemi, Japanese Minister of Health, Labor and Welfare, has been insisting that there is no serious concern about the injury caused by genetic vaccines, and without running from the current situation of injured patients, they plan to construct a new vaccine production system in preparation for the next pandemic. This is an unbelievable, crazy situation. The Japanese government is the first in the world to approve a new type of vaccine called replicon vaccine and plans to start to supply it in this fall and winter. The Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry is providing a huge amount of subsidies for this project, and factories to produce new vaccines are being built one after another in Japan. I visited these factories directly. Furthermore, the Japanese government is currently soliciting large-scale clinical trials worth $900 million from pharmaceutical companies that are taking on the challenge of developing vaccines to prepare for the next pandemic by disease X, proposed during the Davos conference this year. It is speculated that the movement by the Japanese government is part of CEPI, Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, 100 Days Mission, which aims to shorten the time to 1/3 of Operation Warp Speed. Namely, they are trying to shorten the vaccine business cycle by developing a vaccine in 100 days. This is possible only by ignoring the human rights perspective. Amendments to the WHO's International Health Regulation, IHR, and the so-called Pandemic Treaty, which are about to be adopted at the 77th World Health Assembly this year, are attempting to give rationality and legal binding force to such unscientific and dangerous crazy plans. If such things continue, there is a high risk that Japan-made vaccines will be exported under the guise for false trust. If Japan were to become a perpetrator, it would leave irreparable harm to future generations. Therefore, the actions of Japanese government must be stopped by international collaborations. Although it has already been 3 years since I started to give lectures to educate Japanese people about the dangers of vaccines, it is still difficult to penetrate through the sound barriers of mainstream media. If we tell the truth about vaccines on YouTube, it is deleted within a day. The reality is that we are facing censorship and speech suppression almost every day. Therefore, I put my hope in the publication of a book, which is the last version of speech, and published a book with a title, Withdrawn from WHO. It is difficult to stop this movement because it is now politically hopeless to change the situation of the Japanese government. The message I would like to convey to the world is that when disease X occurs in the future, you should never trust the Japan-made vaccine that was developed in a short period of time. In order to protect human rights in cases of control that transcend national boundaries, I believe that sharing the truth and countries is so important, and that this is a step towards unity and solidarity. Only through the process of information exchange between all countries in the world, we can find hope in the midst of despair. I do hope that my statement will help all of you to protect your healthy life and your family. Thank you very much for your attention.
The deer's cry. I rise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness, of the Creator, of creation. I rise today through the strength of Christ's birth, with his baptism, through the strength of his crucifixion, with his burial, through the strength of his resurrection, with his ascension, through the strength of his descent for the judgment of doom. I rise today through the strength of the love of the cherubim, in obedience of angels, in the service of archangels, in the hope of the resurrection to meet with reward, in the prayers of patriarchs, in prediction of prophets, in preaching of apostles, in faith of confessors, in innocence of holy virgins, in deeds of righteous men. I arise today through the strength of heaven, light of sun, radiance of moon, splendor of fire, speed of lightning, swiftness of wind, depth of sea, stability of earth, firmness of rock. I arise today through God's strength to pilot me, God's might to uphold me, God's wisdom to guide me, God's eye to look before me, God's ear to hear me, God's word to speak to me, God's hand to guard me, God's way to lie before me, God's shield to protect me, God's host to save me from the snares of devils, from temptations of vices, from every one who shall wish me ill, afar and anear, alone and in a multitude. I summon today all these powers between me and those evils, against every cruel, merciless power that may oppose my body and soul, against incantations of false prophets, against black laws of pagandom, against false laws of heretics, against craft of idolatry, against spells of women and smiths and wizards, against every knowledge that corrupts man's body and soul. Christ to shield me today against poisoning, against burning, against drowning, against wounding, so there come to me abundance of reward. Christ with me, Christ before me, Christ behind me, Christ in me, Christ beneath me, Christ above me, Christ on my right, Christ on my left, Christ when I lie down, Christ when I sit down, Christ when I arise, Christ in the heart of every man who thinks of me, Christ in the mouth of everyone who speaks of me, Christ in the eye of everyone that sees me, Christ in every ear that hears me. I arise today through a mighty strength, the invocation of the Trinity, through belief in the threeness, through confession of the oneness, of the Creator, of creation. The power of that prayer is incredible, as you can feel, as you can hear, as you can witness. And it is our connection with God which the globalists have most tried to break, along with our family connections and our community connections. But above all, they fear our having a relationship with the divine, a direct experience of and relating to the source of all life, to the divine. If you would like to hear a sung version of this prayer, we'll put it in underneath. I hope this brings you great comfort in these challenging and difficult times, which, as we've heard today in this interview, we will get through, but not without some turbulence. I hope this prayer helps to keep you also calm as it does me.